There we go. It's now officially recording. Thank you so much for honoring the invitation to be here with us on the dialogue sessions on Capital Radio. It is a needful platform that we have created so that we can have all perspective, especially news that is not largely promoted by mainstream media. We've heard so much about the rollout of 5G technology in South Africa and how in certain global spheres it has caused a raving war between America and China, but little do we know of this and why exactly should we be concerned about it. Mandy has just joined us. I think she's going to do her mic rather, so we can join in conversation. By way of introduction to our guests and everyone who's listening, please make an introduction as to who you are and what SASIM is about. I'll give Mandy a similar opportunity when you're done.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me. My name is David Nye. I am an integrative medical doctor practicing in Cape Town. Integrative medicine means taking the best of conventional medicine and natural medicine and trying to get to the root cause of what causes people's problems instead of just putting on a plaster and treating the symptoms. So I also head up an organization called SASIM, which stands for the South African Society for Integrative Medicine. We are an association of health practitioners, probably about 180 by now, who are all interested in practicing integrative medicine and concerned with toxicity and electromagnetic frequencies and all the ills of our modern society that impact on our health.
Great stuff. Mandy has frozen there for some reason, I'm not sure why, but let's continue a bit. She'll join us in when she can. People are being affected by wireless radiation. I'm sure this is not new, certainly not in South Africa, where certain things are kept under wraps and the public isn't often informed about changes that the government implements. Do you feel that this is growing dramatically, and what have you seen coming into your practice as well as cases in South Africa?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because the effect of EMF, which is electromagnetic frequencies, on the human body is not always easy to detect or to pick up or to diagnose. And I think that, in fact, we've been seeing the effect of these radiations for the last 20 or 30 years, ever since cell phones came onto the scene. And people haven't realized that they've been affected, but we've seen an enormous increase in things like anxiety and depression and sleeping problems and palpitations and all sorts of things, which people blame on everything else, but a lot of it has to do with electromagnetic frequencies, and some people are more sensitive than others. So the amount of frequencies is just increasing in our society day by day. I mean, we're just getting pounded from left and right. You know, we've all got Wi-Fi in the homes, we carry our cell phones on us, we talk on the cell phones too much. And even things like baby monitors or cordless phones in the home all emit radiation. Even the smart meters, you know, electric meters emit radiation. So we're exposed to a lot of radiation, and we're very worried about the rollout of 5G, which started happening during lockdown, because 5G is going to just compound the amount of radiation, and is already. Some people are feeling the effects of the 5G in a very pronounced way.
Great stuff. I see Mandy has joined us. Thank you for that explanation, the intro. Mandy, if you can just unmute yourself and speak to us. We're just allowing the introductions to start before we zoom into the crux of this exchange. I think Mandy is being affected by the electromagnetic frequencies there. She's not able to join us. Mandy, the sister of Randy, please unmute yourself so you can talk with us, please. Your mic, we can't hear you. All right, Dr. David, let's continue. Can you explain to us what is electrosensitivity, or what is familiarly known as EHS?
This is a situation where some people are more sensitive to the electromagnetic radiation than others. A lot of people will not feel anything, and some people are so sensitive that if they walk within 50 meters of a cell phone, they can get a migraine. I know that when we go to the shops, when we go shopping, a lot of these shopping malls have got a high level of electromagnetic radiation, I think probably also 5G as well. My wife gets quite exhausted within an hour. She's absolutely exhausted after shopping, whereas I walk in and out of the shops and I don't feel anything. So it's a definite sensitivity that some people have, which could be from genetic reasons or possibly not able to detoxify or process or other reasons that we're still working on.
And tell me, are you seeing more patients now that cannot increasingly tolerate this sensitivity or wireless technology for that matter?
We are. We're definitely seeing an increase in patients. And I think it's also, one needs to have an increased awareness to look for it, because if you don't look for it, you're going to blame it on other things. So being aware of the possible symptoms can help one to diagnose it better.
Mandy, I'm sure you can hear us now. She keeps on muting and unmuting the mic. I always say when you do live radio, you always pray to the gods of technology to always be with you. Sometimes some things are unfortunately uncontrollable. Let us continue, Dr. Nye, excuse me. Now we're seeing this dramatic increase of the 5G rollout. At some point we were crazy about 2G, it went to 3G, 4G, and now 5G. And you are now speaking about the health effects of this 5G rollout. But do you feel that SA doctors are educated around these effects, or they sometimes may misdiagnose certain things?
It's a good question, because the majority of doctors are completely unaware of the effects of radiation on human beings. And it's only a small number of even of the integrative doctors. I think most of the integrative doctors are aware of it, but only about 30 of us have actually undergone training with a specialist from Australia, Dr. Russell Cooper, recently, who actually is an expert in this and gave us an intensive training course so that we are a lot more better prepared to deal with it. But the majority of doctors definitely are not aware of it and don't diagnose it and can't treat it.
But I'm certain there's policy, or at least the Department of Health for that matter, should be aware of emerging challenges. And I know there needs to be certain studies that are done before the likes of the 5G towers are even implemented for that matter. Was there, in your own assumption, a bit of mischief from the government as well as the telecoms industry when they were not able to inform the public and get informed consent from us before they rolled out the 5G towers?
You call that a little bit of mischief. I call it a catastrophe. No, it's certainly a big bit of mischief. Now, the problem is that the South African government and the authorities all base their warning signs and the levels of radiation on outdated standards. These standards were set 20 years ago and have not been updated, and they are completely irrelevant because they're based on the heating effect of radiation. And we know now that most of the health benefits, the health damage is not through the heating of these radiations, is due to the DNA damage and oxidative stress. And the government doesn't recognize the very low levels that should be set by the radiation authorities. And that's why we're in a situation where they're not prepared to accept that they're doing anything wrong. And I mean, before they roll out these 5G, they really should prove that they are safe. And in fact, nobody's done any studies to prove that they're safe, because there aren't any and they're not safe. And if they could only do those studies, they wouldn't roll out the 5G.
And remember when COVID lockdown started, almost everyone, based on what we were seeing on social media or some hyped up news items, we were of the assumption that 5G towers caused COVID. Do you feel that as a medical practitioner, there are some correlations, not necessarily to COVID, but symptoms or the hypersensitivity that is increased by these emitted electromagnetic radiation?
That's a very tricky question, and it could get me into a lot of trouble depending how I answer it. Because I do believe that when you're exposed to 5G, your immune system is weakened and makes you more susceptible to COVID. I know that in the early days of COVID, there were a lot of conspiracy groups going around saying that there's no such thing as COVID, it's all just radio frequency sickness. And in fact, the symptoms of COVID and the symptoms of 5G are very similar.
Wow.
And it did seem apparent that when we first got these bad outbreaks of COVID, like on the Sea Princess, that cruise liner, and parts of Italy, those were high 5G areas. And it did seem that there was a correlation. But I've now realized that the COVID has spread far beyond 5G areas. I mean, we've got COVID in our townships and there's no 5G there. So we don't yet know what the correlation is, but I do believe that in time to come, we will find that there is perhaps an interplay between the two.
Please take us through perhaps some misdiagnoses and which happen to be actually symptoms of exposure to these radioactive signals. For example, if you're saying now there may be some correlation between the two, but what have you picked up? I think Mandy can hear us now. Her network is still breaking a bit. Sorry about the disturbance. If you just to draw parallels between what some may misdiagnose or self-diagnose as something else, which in essence is exposure to hypersensitivity or these electromagnetic rays or radiation.
I'm not quite sure if I understand the question. Are you saying things like anxiety and depression, which could be due to electromagnetic frequencies, or it could be due to stress, or it could be due to a family breakup or crisis?
Definitely.
Those kind of things could be due to many causes, and EMF is only one of them. But we've certainly seen a correlation in an increase in frequency of those conditions over the last 30 years, parallel with the increase of electromagnetic frequencies. And a lot of the clinical studies have actually proven that there is a direct causative effect.
Quite scary when you think of it. I hosted Professor Paul Benecke from Israel the last time we spoke about electromagnetic radiation and its effects, and he spoke of a few cases that are currently pending or taking place in the United States. Are you aware of any that are currently in the South African courts that relate to exposure to electromagnetic frequencies?
There are sporadic cases where people in a locality take a municipality to court to have a 5G mast taken down or a cell phone mast taken down. But there are no major court cases at the moment, although I'm aware that one is being planned on a major scale to tackle this problem.
And do you think that exposure to this electromagnetic radiation differs in terms of age, in terms of geography, and also in terms of social makeup? For example, if people live in suburbs, can access medical aid easily, and those perhaps in rural areas who may be exposed but cannot afford better medical health. Do you feel that there's differences in terms of exposure and the frequencies of these effects?
No, I think everybody is equally susceptible, whether you're poor or rich or whatever. But there are some people who are more sensitive, and those are often people who have other conditions at the same time, which seem to make them more sensitive to the frequencies. Things like having metal toxicity, if they've got a buildup of mercury in their system from mercury fillings in their teeth, or if they suffer from multiple chemical toxicities, or if they have a problem with detoxification. So those people would be more susceptible to the effects of the radiation. But amongst sort of relatively healthy people, there's nothing to discriminate whether you get the best medical care or not as to how you will get it.
And in terms of yourself as an integrative medical or medicine practitioner, what is it that you found interesting that crosses between both allopathy as well as homeopathy or naturopathy, which is quite useful to people but aren't aware of?
I just find I got frustrated with conventional medicine many years ago, because conventional medicine is very good for the acute illness, for trauma, or for something that's really life-threatening, but it's not very good for chronic ill health. And unfortunately, the majority of people nowadays are suffering with chronic ill health due to toxicity in our environment, due to autoimmune diseases, due to electromagnetic radiation. And these are things that conventional medicine doesn't address or even recognize at all. So for me, it's very satisfying to be able to offer people tools or offer people a route to try and explore what's causing their illness and not just treat the symptoms.
Mm.
So that's what drives my passion as far as integrative medicine goes, is that it's infinitely more satisfying because you're not just treating the symptoms and seeing people get side effects from medication.
Mm. And any cross-pollination between India, because I know they're quite big on Ayurvedic medicine, as well as China, which is also quite big on alternative medication, i.e. acupuncture, as well as other streams of medical interventions.
What's the question?
Do you have any synergy or cross-pollination between yourself as South Africa, as well as these countries? Because one, we're part of the BRICS formation, but as far as I'm aware, they are quite advanced in terms of alternative medication or integrative practices.
They are. I mean, Ayurveda and Chinese traditional medicine are probably the two oldest medicines in the world, and they go back more than 5,000–7,000 years. I've had some training in acupuncture and in Chinese herbal medicine. I've had a little bit of training in Ayurveda. I'm also a registered homeopath. So, each integrated doctor will take on tools or training as he sees fit or his interest lies. But there's certainly a lot of common threads in the way that these medical philosophies see the body and how the energy travels in the body and how the body responds to that. So there's a lot of commonality between them.
Mm. Let me just quickly go back to the crux of our discussion here. Do you offer any training though? I know that Sasim, you said, has about 180 plus members, and we've now established that a great majority of these doctors aren't aware in terms of, one, how to diagnose, number two, perhaps treat those who've been exposed to these. Does Sasim offer any training to these doctors, and have you had any interventions or joint ventures with the Department of Health to this effect?
SASM does offer this same training course that I mentioned to you, which we have recorded and is available to any health practitioner who wants to do the course, and it is accredited for CPD. So we do have that as a starting point. We haven't had any interactions with the Department of Health because we feel that we need to have all our ducks in a row. And this court challenge is going to tackle the Department of Health and the government and the Department of Communication all at the same time. So we're hoping that they're going to tackle it in a big way.
What was your response during a lockdown when COVID was initially announced and Madagascar went as far as saying their own COVID organics is the antidote to COVID, and some traditional healers in South Africa were up in arms to say government isn't recognizing indigenous medicine practitioners or traditional doctors? What was your reaction as an integrative medicine or medical practitioner?
I think it's very sad that the authorities, and I mean, even the Allied Health Professions Council, which regulates the naturopaths and homeopaths and all the alternative practitioners, has towed the mainstream line that no practitioner may advocate any treatment for COVID, whether it's herbal or homeopathic or whatever. And I think that is very sad that they have not been more open-minded and allowed natural medical practitioners to promote natural treatments for COVID. I mean, in India, they came up with several homeopathic remedies which were very effective against the COVID. But here we're not allowed to publicly promote them. We can only treat our patients with them, but we can't publicly promote them, otherwise we get into trouble.
Let me just quickly also focus on what you do as a practitioner. what do you find to be a dietary digression or something that we've now enjoyed associating with our eating habits, which heightens exposure to, as we are now speaking, electromagnetic frequencies? Or in your experience, what is it that we shouldn't be focusing on, but South Africa is heavily focused on in terms of dietary plans or eating habits?
I think the main aspect of dietary, building up your resistance to effective radiation, is to eat as organic and clean a diet as possible. Unfortunately, a lot of our vegetables are polluted with chemicals. All our meats and chicken are polluted with hormones and antibiotics and more chemicals. And if we can eat a diet that is relatively free of those chemicals, it puts us in a better position to resist the effects of electromagnetic radiation.
Great stuff. I see Mandy has tried. Mandy, can you hear us? Mandy is speaking there, but we can't get her. She can hear us, but we can't hear her. Mandy, we see that you're responding. You can hear us, but we can't hear you. Can you speak into your mic, please, so we can also involve you in this discussion? There we go. I'm hearing something from her. Can you hear us, Mandy? I think I'm going to have to learn lip reading today because Mandy is speaking, but no sound is coming through. Mandy, we can hear you, but no, we can't hear you, rather, excuse me, but you can hear us apparently. Dr. David, what do you feel if you were to be given an opportunity to speak with the Department of Health would be some of the key things that you've seen your colleagues or counterparts from the international sphere currently doing, you feel should also be implemented here to reduce susceptibility to electromagnetic radiation in South Africa?
I think the most important message that we would need to get through to the Department of Health is to look at the studies, and there are hundreds of studies, thousands of studies that have been done to show that even at low levels, electromagnetic radiation is affecting our health, particularly that of our children. Children who use a cell phone, it's the most terrible thing because their brains are 50% more susceptible to the radiation. And in Russia, they say no child should have a cell phone, I think, under the age of 18. And to see mothers giving children cell phones to keep themselves amused is terrible. So one would like to say to the Department of Health, please to look at the studies, and based on that to issue guidelines to the public and give them advice on how to reduce their electromagnetic exposure. Don't put Wi-Fi in schools. Don't put cell phone masks near schools or creches. Tell people not to have the Wi-Fi on at night. Make sure the Wi-Fi is far away from you as possible. Make sure your cell phone is far away from you as possible. These are all important things that the public needs to know. And if it came from the Department of Health, it would be so much better.
Is it true what I heard that exposure to, as well as always putting your cell phone next to you, in males particularly, heightens the chances of contracting prostate cancer?
Well, and male infertility too. Wow. I think that male infertility is probably the more common one, but certainly all types of cancer can develop from cell phones. And men who carry their cell phones in their pocket, but even if they just talk on them next to their ear for several hours a day, have been found to have increasing infertility. So it's a big problem, and we see a lot of infertility these days.
Let's try speaking with Mandy. Mandy, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Eventually, Mandy has joined us. She needs a drum roll.
Thank you, technology.
No
Finally.
I was in conversation with Dr. David Nye here. We're speaking about exposure to electromagnetic radiation. And I know you're a survivor. By way of ensuring that our audiences also do participate, please kindly introduce yourself and just share with us what it is that you do. And I'll just briefly field a few questions to you and also interact with Dr. David as you interact.
This is a privilege. Thank you. I must just say, having people to speak to about this is very comforting, because it's a lonely journey when one is the canary in the mine, they say. But I'm a practical person, and sorry about my voice, but it's just one of the symptoms of extended exposure with my lungs. I've developed lung problems, but I'm a refugee more than I am a sensitive, because I never knew about this problem until it was in my face when I was a chef for 30 years, but developed a software program for the hospitality industry. And so I started working a lot on computers, and I was exposed a lot to 18 hours a day to, radiation, but didn't know about it. So when I moved into the Hearts and Golf Club, I stayed on the estate. On day 3, I walked my dog, and there was this fake looking tree, and my skin just flared up like sunburn. Wow. And there were 3 of these things. So every time I walked past one of these fake looking trees, I got this terrible rash. Didn't know what it was. I just thought it was, for like wires for electricity and so on. I mean, I knew it was, we built software, but I didn't think about the towers so much as I was building software. So when I couldn't sleep at night, I didn't know why, headaches, bleeding nose, runny stomach. I then went to the doctor, and they said I've got a lot of melatonin. I didn't understand why. And my T cells were so high. And they thought this was some kind of immune response, for some autoimmune response. So I told them my experience of recent, because they asked what changed in my life. And I just said, well, I moved to this place. And so I then Googled how to test for electromagnetic radiation, where these towers led me to understand what EMF is. And then I found Tracy, who came to measure my home with there's radiation. And they said that all the apartments all have Wi-Fi routers. And when you stacked up, the lift comes to your floor and you into your apartment, but every apartment has got a lot of, so I had exposure to a lot of this Wi-Fi, all my neighbors and those towers. And I was sleeping in the bathroom where I could find peace for my head. Literally, I made a bed in the bathroom, and my partner said to me, this is ridiculous. What are you doing? Are you going mad? And the strange thing is, when Tracy did come to measure my home, it was showing up green, where the toilet bathroom is where I was sleeping, was red everywhere else in every room. So my body had a physical reaction to the proximity of where I was to the stuff. And that was the only thing that made me realize, because I couldn't physically see it to believe it, until my body responded exactly according to my physical proximity to this exposure. And ever since then, I've moved 8 times in 9 years, and my symptoms have progressed. That's why I'm staying now in a place where there's clean air, because I suffer with breathing now. And I'm not sure what your conversations have been about. I haven't been able to listen into your radio station to connect any dots to my symptoms. But it certainly started with the headache, psoriasis. I developed skin problems, breathing issues, thyroid problems. After I had all the basic symptoms in the beginning, tinnitus. I was in hospital, I lost my balance. They called it vertigo. And from vertigo, I developed lung disease. And I've been a vegan for 23 years, and I'm a chef. I know my diets. So even the diets have held off I should possibly have cancer by now, but I think my health has staved off by my managing my diet very well. But it doesn't stop my body from suffering. So I'm not too sure how further to take it, other than I'm moving all the time to get away from it, and that's where I'm at. So thank you.
Dr. David, you're listening to Mandy there. Can you suggest any dietary plans or any interventions to lessen the effects of this exposure? We hear that out of 9 years, she's almost relocated around 8 times. And at some point she had to sleep in a bathroom to make sure that she stays away from the effects of Wi-Fi technology. We often assume that technology is going to better enhance as well as ease our connectivity as well as life at large. But it seems in that case, it's made things worse. What must she do differently?
Well, as Mandy says, getting away from the radiation is your first step, to put as much distance between you and the whatever's emitting the radiation. And then, as I mentioned earlier, as a clean diet without chemicals as far as possible. And then there are a few supplements, things like glutathione, which is an important detoxifier, which can help to mop up oxidative stress. In fact, there are quite a few natural supplements that help to mop up oxidative stress, which helps to mitigate the effects. But glutathione, I think, is quite an important one. It's quite an expensive supplement, and not everybody knows about it. But it does help the body to detoxify and to mop up some of that oxidative stress.
And Mandy, if the SA government were listening today, what is it that you'd like them to know? Because seemingly some may go as far as arguing that it's only but a minute fraction of the population that is affected, but they are affected nonetheless, and they are citizens of the country.
Yes, I agree. I have the most energy one could think of, and the fact that the brain fog undermines my ability to allow my, make my team respect me sometimes, because, being a creative being and being able to have a company that hospitals are using our platform for, and software integrate to SAP, one has to be aware of the system that one's building, but to have this brain fog and not remember all the details of what one has to do, I have to rely on my colleagues and recordings to help me remember some things that you just aren't present with you. But even that, it's the sweats, it's the hot and cold feeling, it's just uncomfortable in your body, the shivers. And so what I'm saying the government is doing is making their society unproductive, because I've had my own business since I was 21. And I've now literally had to hand over my running of my business to other people who might not be as competent as me, as because I've got the vision, but I'm not able to cope. I'm exhausted, thyroid problems. So they're progressively getting worse. So how does one fund the health? How does one eat organic food and afford the right diet without feeling impacted? One doesn't feel comfortable in one's own body. So all of this causing sweats, irritability. Think of a community that is already stressed with the environmental, governmental problems, and now your own body is the nearest thing to your own well-being. And if your body that you're in is uncomfortable, that you feel cold and hot, no matter where you go, you're stressed, your peers don't want to be around you anymore. How does that develop? How do you build a community from that? Yes. And when they're not aware of it, you blame outside things, headaches, age, other people, it's me. And so you start self-blame, enjoying your environment. So it's destroying the productivity of our planet and the well-being of our souls.
Definitely. Dr. David, I know you're busy with a survey. How can people access this survey, and what outcomes do you want for it to reach rather?
Well, it's not really a survey. We basically created a questionnaire for people who are electrosensitive. And we're trying to build up a database of people in the country who are affected, so that we can use this information perhaps with a court case or with producing statistics. We are busy creating another website at the moment, but it's not up and running. So if anybody particularly wants to complete this questionnaire and lodge it on the file so that we can build up the database, they can email me, and I can give you my email address. It's info@greenhousehealth.com.
Great stuff. It's info@greenhousehealth.com. I know that certain governments or other citizens have lodged civil cases against their own governments to impose a moratorium on the erection of 5G towers. Do you think the SA government should also toe the line?
Absolutely.
I know,
Question is how to persuade them.
definitely. I know Mandy is quite scared of these fake trees.
I've got an idea. I was thinking that just like there's a toll and a tax on the road to travel, one should pay a toll on the internet highway towards an alternative, healthy, technology solution that we could invest in. And South Africa could lead the world, because I think South Africa is taking heed from, the deep state, or whatever you want to call it, the people that are running the banks, where South Africa could innovate with our own citizens. And we've always made a plan, and we've got alternative technology that we could use for South Africa to lead Africa. And Africa is bigger than the rest of the continent. So we could actually use South Africa as a test ground for a better nation, healthier nation, that doesn't have to adopt things that are not healthy for our bodies and not what nature intended. And I hope Doctor can help us with spearheading that.
No pressure on the doctor. Just as a closing remark, Doc, I see Zoom is reminding me that I'm almost exceeding my time. Please conclude or wrap up the convo on your end and allow Mandy the same too.
Yeah, I think that the assault on all of us by EMFs is just getting worse and worse. And doctors need to wake up and realize what's happening to our patients. They need to become aware of it. The public needs to become aware of it. Every single person needs to know how to reduce the effect of EMFs in their home. We can't do without cell phones, but we can certainly minimize the danger to us and to our children. And we need to get everything hardwired. This fiber cables coming into our homes is far better than Wi-Fi. And then even from the router, we need to hardwire our laptops and use WhatsApp on our computers so that we minimize all that radiation. And we do need to inform the government, and the government needs to get better informed and to stop this rollout of 5G, which is probably going to